The game totals tonight at the Sky Dome. The Brewers, 22 runs, 31 hits. Those are both team records. No errors for Milwaukee and 16 men left on base. For Toronto, 2 runs on 9 hits, 1 error, and 6 left on base. The winning pitcher, Cal Eldred, 5-1. Jimmy Key, the loser, 8-12. And now 9-8 in his career against the Brewers. And his record this season against Milwaukee is 1-2. A big crowd, but very few hung around for the entire game. 50,408 were here at one time tonight as the Jays get above the 3 million mark in attendance. But the Brewers set a new league record for the most hits in a game with 31, surpassing the old mark of 30. And they tied the Major League record set in 1901 by the Giants against the Reds. And I think in those days they were called the Red Legs. Full name. 22 runs, 22-2 the final tonight, Bob. We have to select a turning point, but I would go ahead and say it was Paul Molitor's 2-run homer in the first inning.
Yeah, let's get that out of the way. That was such a long, long time ago. I'll go along with that, Pat. The Miller Lite turning point tonight, Paul Molitor's home run. He almost hit one last night. What do you talk about weird things and weird nights and weird games? Last night he hits one that bounces back in the ballpark.
Yeah.
After it hit the top of the fence, it could have went out and changed the whole complex of that game, Patrick. And tonight he juices one in the first inning, no contest, and sends the Brewers on to a merry victory here tonight.
Bob, I was doing some figuring with the 22 runs tonight and the 26 runs in 2 games here, coupled with the 26 in the last 2 games against Toronto. 52 runs in the last 4 games against this Toronto staff, all of the games in the last 2 weeks.
Boy, isn't that something?
That's an average of 13 runs a game.
That's big time.
You just hope that the Brewers saved a few for tomorrow and Sunday.
It will be David Cohn tomorrow. David Cohn tomorrow against Chris Bosio with our pregame show getting underway at 11:35. 11:35 Central Time, followed by Game 3 at 12:15. Until then, this is Bob Uecker along with Pat Hughes, our producer and engineer Kent Sommerfeld, inviting you to stay tuned for Pat's postgame show. And until tomorrow afternoon, bidding you a very pleasant good evening from the Sky Dome here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Once again, the final score tonight, Milwaukee 22 and Toronto 2. So long, everybody. You've been listening to the Brewers Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Sky Dome. It's Pat Hughes once again. Time for the 10th inning show, brought to you by the Miller Brewing Company and the Coca-Cola Company. The Brewers snap both their 5-game losing streak and their 10-game road losing streak in a big way tonight. Brewers absolutely bombing Toronto 22-2 here in Game 2 of this series. We'll recap the scoring, and sure, we'll play some highlights a bit later. The highlights we don't get to tonight, we'll play all of them on the pregame show tomorrow prior to Game 3. Let's see what else is going on around baseball. We told you, here in Toronto, the Brewers set all kinds of records. A league record, most base hits in a game. Team records, most runs, most base hits. Scotty Fletcher had a career-high 5 RBIs. They did everything right tonight. The Brewers pounded the Blue Jays 22-2. Back with a scoring recap and highlights after this on the Brewers Radio Network. Midwest Express likes to bring you the game's best. Tonight's MVP of the game is Scotty Fletcher of the Milwaukee Brewers. He had a career-high 5 RBIs here tonight. In Scott's name, Midwest Express will donate $50 to the Cap Fund. Midwest Express Airlines, the best care in the air. The Brewers winning it tonight by a score of 22-2 as they get to within 4.5 of the top once again. So even though it's been a miserable week, when you go back to Monday night in New York and that heartbreaking loss, the Brewers, the bottom line is they've lost only 1 game in the standings now to Toronto for the week, as they began the week 3.5 behind. Now they are 4.5 back as they even up this series, and they're still alive. The Brewers, after tonight, have a total of 34 games to play, and Toronto will have 33 games to play. Time to recap the scoring of tonight's game. First of all, the final score. Brewers 22, Blue Jays 2. The Brewers went to work right away against Toronto starter Jimmy Key, Pat Listash led off the game with a single to left, and with one away, Paul Molitor came up.
And the pitch to Molly. He sends one to left and deep. Get up. Get out of here. Gone for Molitor. And it's 2-0. Brewers on Molitor's 12th of the year.
Molitor had a good night. It seems like everybody did. Paul had 3 hits, drove in 4. And as Bob told you, that home run was number 12 this season for Molitor. In the second inning, Scott Fletcher grounded out to drive in a run and make it 3-0. And then in the third inning against Mike Timlin, the Brewers put 4 on the board. With 1 away, runners at first and second, B.J. Surhoff came up. Now the pitch to Surhoff, and B.J. hits a line drive, base hit into center field. Robin's going to try to score. Devon White's throw toward the plate is not in time. Robin scores standing up. Jaha stopped at second on the run-scoring single by B.J. Surhoff, and the Brewers lead 4-0. Surhoff had an RBI right there, his 49th. B.J. was on base 5 times in the game with 3 walks and a pair of singles. Kevin Seitzer then forced a runner, setting the stage for Scotty Fletcher. The pitch on the way. Swing and a base hit to right. Coming in to score is Jaha. Seitzer, who was running with the pitch, advances to second. And the run is in, and it's 5-0. Scott Fletcher with RBI number 2 on the night and number 39 on the year. Pat Listash kept the inning going with an infield single, and then Darrell Hamilton came through. There they go. The pitch swung on in line into left center field. That's a base hit. 2 runs have scored. Listash is going to be held at third. The throw to third not in time as he dives back in. A 2-run single for Hamilton, and the Brewers lead it 7-0. Hamilton had a good ball game. Darrell with 4 hits and 5 runs batted in for the Brew Crew. Anyway, the Brewers led 7-0. Toronto got 1 run in the bottom of the third. Manny Lee drove in the run with a ground ball, 7-1. The Brewers then put the game away, really, in the 4th inning as they scored half a dozen times to take a commanding 13-1 lead. The inning started, if I can read the book, with Vaughn lining out to center field. But then Yount doubled and Jaha walked, and so did Surhoff, loading the bases for Kevin Seitzer. The pitch line into center field, that's a base hit. 1 run is in and the bases remain loaded. Seitzer solidly banging a base hit into center, and the Brewers lead 8-1. Kevin Seitzer had 3 RBIs, and he enjoyed a 5-hit ball game here tonight. Seitzer was up 7 times, and he bats 8th in the lineup. That gives you an idea. In fact, I just realized, checking the book, the leadoff spot for the Brewers in this game, the leadoff spot came up 8 times in a 9-inning game. That's absolutely incredible. Anyway, Seitzer's base hit gave the Brewers a lead of 8-1, and then Scott Fletcher came up in that 4th inning. And now Linton's pitch to Fletcher is lined into center field, another base hit. 1 run is in. Surhoff to the plate. He'll score. White's throw gets away at third, and Seitzer will score. Fletcher goes back to second, and he is safe there. 3-run score on the play, and the Brewers lead 11-1. Yante Bichette had an RBI single in the 6th to make the score 14-1. Dave Winfield had an infield RBI single in the 6th to make it 14-2. The Brewers scored twice in the 7th. Run-scoring hits by Hamilton and Molitor doing the trick. Then Scott Fletcher had a sac fly in the 8th inning, coupled with Darrell Hamilton's 2-run single, and the Brewers had a 19-2 lead. And then they established league records in the 9th inning as they came up with a total of 5 hits after 2 were out against David Wells to blow the game completely wide open, as Seitzer had a 2-run double and Jim Gantner a run-scoring infield hit to drive in the final run of the night. 22-2 the final. 31 hits, an all-time league record, and it tied the all-time major league record set in 1901. 22 runs, 31 hits for the Brewers. They did not commit an error and left 16 men on. For Toronto, 2 runs on 9 hits, 1 error, and 6 stranded. Cal Eldred, 5-1, the winner. Jimmy Key, 8-12, the loser. Back with more of our 10th inning show after this on the Brewers Radio Network. For Bob Uecker, Pat Hughes saying thanks for listening and goodbye from the Sky Dome in Toronto. Again, the final tonight. The Brewers 22 and the Blue Jays 2. Good night, everybody. The 10th inning show has been a presentation of the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brew Crew banged out 31 base hits to tie a major league record set way back in 1901. They had some other records as well. The Brewers set team marks for the most runs in a game with 22, and their 31 hits was also a Brewer record. They had the most total bases. And anyway, the Brewers set a lot of records in last night's win. We'll play some highlights. We'll play a lot of highlights, in fact, from the game in just a few moments. And we'll talk to the man who keeps the records for the Brewers, the director of publicity and media relations, Tom Skybosh. It's game here at the Skydome in Toronto. The Brewers banging out 31 base hits on their way to a 22-2 win. It all started in the first inning when Pat Listash singled into left. With one away, Paul Molitor came up.
And the pitch to Molly. He sends one to left and deep. Get up. Get out of here. Gone for Molitor. And it's 2-0. Brewers on Molitor's 12th of the year.
Molitor with 2 RBIs. He has 70. Scotty Fletcher drove in a run with a second inning groundout, and the Brewers led 3-0. And then they really got serious offensively in the third as they scored 4 times. It started with 1 away and 2 men on when B.J. Surhoff came up for the Brewers.
Now the pitch to Surhoff, and B.J. hits a line drive base hit into center field. Robbins going to try to score. Devon White's throw toward the plate is not in time. Robbins scores standing up. Jaha stopped at second on the run-scoring single by B.J. Surhoff, and the Brewers lead 4-0.
Surhoff with run batted in number 49 this season. Kevin Seitzer grounded out to leave men at first and third, but then Scotty Fletcher came up for the Brew Crew.
The pitch on the way. Swing and a base hit to right. Coming in to score is Jaha. Seitzer, who was running with the pitch, advances to second. And the run is in, and it's 5-0.
Scott Fletcher with his second RBI of the night. The Brewers led by 5. Pat Listash kept the rally going with an infield single, and then Darrell Hamilton came up with 2 outs, and the count went to 3-2.
There they go. The pitch swung on and lined into left center field. That's a base hit. 2 runs have scored. Listash is going to be held at third. The throw to third not in time as he dives back in.
Hamilton with a 2-run single. The Brewers led 7-0. Toronto got their first run in the bottom of the third. It was 7-1 Milwaukee as the Brew Crew came up in the 4th inning. With the bases loaded and 1 away, Kevin Seitzer stepped in.
The pitch line into center field. That's a base hit. 1 run is in and the bases remain loaded.
Seitzer with the second of his 5 hits during the game. His 54th run batted in. The Brewers had an 8-1 lead. And then Scotty Fletcher came up again for Milwaukee.
And now Linton's pitch to Fletcher is lined into center field. Another base hit. 1 run is in. Surhoff to the plate. He'll score. White's throw gets away at third, and Seitzer will score. Fletcher goes back to second, and he is safe there.
And the Brewers suddenly had broken it wide open. It was 11-1 at that juncture. However, the Brewers were not finished. Far from it, as Pat Listash came up.
Here's the 2-1 pitch. Ground ball up the middle. That's a base hit to center field. Coming in to score is Fletcher, and the Brewers lead 12-1.
Pat Listash with his 3rd base hit of the game, knocking in run number 37 for the season for Listash. In the 4th inning, it just kept on going. Darrell Hamilton had a base hit to right, and then Paul Molitor came up.
And the pitch on the way to Paul. Line into left field, a base hit. Listash scores. Hamilton to second, and the Brewers lead it 13-1.
Each team scored a run in the 6th, and it was 14-2 Milwaukee coming up in the 7th inning. With 2 outs and nobody on, Scott Fletcher singled, and so did Pat Listash, setting the stage for Darrell Hamilton.
Hamilton lines one down the right field line. That's falling in there for a base hit. Fletcher will score. On his way to third is Listash, and the Brewers lead 15-2. And now
Darrell Hamilton had 4 hits and 5 runs batted in for the evening. And then in the 7th inning, Paul Molitor came up.
Now McDonald's 1-2 to Paulie, and it's lined in the left. There's a club record, or at least a tie for the club mark, as Molitor bangs a single to left. His 3rd hit. Paul drives in his 4th run as Listash comes in to score, and it's now 16-2.
The club record that I mentioned was 22 base hits in a game, something the Brewer club had established 4 previous times. So they were looking for the club record as they came up in the 8th inning. With Bob Uecker calling the action, Dante Bichette came up.
Here is the pitch. Dante sends a roller towards the hole in the left field, a base hit. Bichette with his second hit tonight, and that is a new club record for Milwaukee.
23 base hits in a single game. In the 8th inning with the bases loaded and one away, Scotty Fletcher delivered a sacrifice fly. An infield single by Jim Gantner loaded the bases for Darrell Hamilton.
3-2 pitch. Runners go. Darrell Hamilton socks one in the right center. 2 more runs are going to score. Gantner goes to third as Surhoff and Seitzer are in. And this onslaught continues against this Toronto staff.
Darrell Hamilton with his 4th and 5th RBIs of the night. He has 50 ribbies now for the season. In the 9th inning, the Brewers had 2 outs and 2 on when Kevin Seitzer came up.
Late in this game, here's a smash to the gap in left center all the way to the wall. This is going to score 2 more. You have to send them. Seitzer at second, a 2-run double, and it's 21-2 on a 5-hit night for Kevin Seitzer.
Kevin Seitzer had 5 hits. Scotty Fletcher had 5 hits, 4 base hits each for Pat Listash and Darrell Hamilton. When's the last time you saw 4 guys in one game combined for 18 base hits? Well, that's what we saw last night. 22-2 the final. The Brewers with a club record 22 runs. The 31 base hits by the Brewers shatters their old record of 22. And there were just all kinds of records set in last night's game. The 31 hits by the Brewers tied a Major League record for a 9-inning game established by the New York Giants way back in 1901. And it established a new American League record. The old mark was 30 set by the Yankees against Boston way back in 1923. The Brewers, a record-setting performance on their way to the 22-2 blowout win over Toronto. Back with more of our On Deck show right after this on the Brewers Radio Network.